All right, now let's kick off. Let's get people involved in this conversation. First of all, tell us all how to potty train babies 2 or 3 years before most of us even begin to think about trying.
Well, it's simple. It means making a connection with your baby to begin with. So that would mean not putting the baby down, actually carrying the baby the whole time. So they're either in a sling or carried. And then you start to pick up the baby's signal that they need to go to the toilet. And then when their signal, they realise you're picking up on the signal, they realise they're being heard. And that signal will then get stronger and stronger and stronger. And therefore, they then have that innate ability to understand, right, we need the toilet now. And then it's just about refinement. We're here all to refine things, aren't we? That's the whole point of the human experience, is refinement. And rather than dumb them down for, say, 3 years by putting them in a nappy...
Because we're told to.
But then the worst thing is then you kind of flip it on them and you say, well, actually, what I've been telling you for 3 years isn't true. You need to not stop doing that and go here. And we have more trust in our pets. People litter trays for cats or their puppies. They potty train a puppy really early, and we're meant to be the most intelligent species, so...
When you put it like that, because I heard you say that last week, when you put it like that, the fact that, A, we're misleading them. We're saying, you can poo in your pants for the rest of your life. It's fine. I will change your nappy when don't you worry about a thing. Toilets, no need. Ignore the toilet in the house. And then see that. Well, A, that's completely mad. And B, you talk about us being the most intelligent species. Yet we sort of give our dogs and our cats the benefit of the fact that we know they can be house trained within 8 to 10 weeks, 12 weeks.
Absolutely.
You've just got a puppy, haven't you?
Yeah, we got a puppy beginning of December. She was 8 weeks old, and by Christmas she was fully
So
house trained.
why have we fallen into this? Could it be advertising everybody?
There
I
is
think
a
it might be.
consumerist template, but again, you should always use nature as the filter. So, are there nappies in nature? No, it's just an experience again. Just we're almost disattached in a way as parents now. And it's how can we improve that attachment? And that means spending more time in that position. It's not always society allows that now, For some mothers, that's just not possible. For some parents, it's not possible. But it's understanding that, well, that's actually the normal template, not the social norm. There's a difference between social norms and natural norms,
Yeah. And one of your big sort of taglines is, if you can't live in nature, you can still live naturally, or as close to naturally as possible for you.
Yeah, like we can't all live in nature, but it doesn't mean we can't live naturally, or at least find natural ways of living in what would be an urban environment. And why is that important? Well, 83% of the UK live in urban environments, right? And we spend 90% of that time indoors. So what are we doing in those environments, and how can we flip those and make them more nourishing and more growth promoting?
Let's go for that. Let's go for the bedroom. Come
on. So in the bedroom, right, let's say the bedroom you spend how many hours?
8, 10.
8, 10,
yeah.
Right? Any sleep study would suggest 8, right? So you're breathing in and out the same air in the same room. Some people might have been in that same bedroom. I know people that have been in the same bedroom for 20 years, right? So firstly, it's the sensory experience. They're in the same linear box for 20 years, breathing in and out the same materials. So that can be benzene, xylene, formaldehyde. They're all neurotoxins, right? So you have the sensory deprivation from the environment because you're living in the same box. So that then dumbs down the neurological system. Then it can be the toxins that we're inhaling, which can dumb down the sensory and neurological system. So I would go bring more nature in, more plants, more green, more stuff to stimulate the ancestral eye. There's amazing studies on that would suggest that you stare at a flip book and a flip chart. A book would suggest a nature scene, and we go into what's called rest and digest, like a parasympathetic state, which is when we're super calm. And then they show you a picture of a storm, and then we go into sympathetic, which is like fight and flight. So that's when we're upregulated, we all experience that. Most of us are in that state, survival, a large proportion of the day, and this is why. So the storm, they then show an urban setting, and the urban setting stimulates the same fight and flight survival mechanism, So only when we actually see greenery, see nature, can we relate to it as this calm experience. So in the bedroom, how do we do that? So yeah, you can bring plants in, you can bring nature scenes in, but you can also use something very simple that gets you down regulated, and that's breath. So simple breathing techniques. So there's tempos like a 4-second inhale and a 6-second out. There's a 4-second inhale and a 6-second out, and you nasal breathe. 6 cycles of that is just a minute, and that's just enough to send you under. And that will also, if you've had a upregulated day, it could be anything, it could be even the tube experience. Like last night, I flew back from Dublin, And the flights, it's like 4 hours of just nightmare at the airport. Flights were cancelled. The storm was last night, right? So at the airport already, I'm already down regulating. I've got like blue blocking glasses on to mitigate the bright light, so I know it can get the sleep hormones in when I arrive home. And then it was straight into breath work. I put a breathing app on, brilliant. And again, that's just the sound then. It's like a universal sound, like a dee, dee, and you just follow that. So you don't even have to count. It just sends you, drops you in. So it's like hitting meditation. Anyone meditates, breathe before you go into it. It's much easier practice. But it drops you in, and then you can go into rest and digest. Why rest and digest? Well, that's exactly what it is. That's how we prepare ourselves for sleep. It's how we digest our food, because everything's restful. So there's the environment will change.
Can you tell us about amber light, please?
Absolutely. So melatonin is, we laud it as a sleep hormone, but we don't really respect it. So it's a regulatory system for your digestion. So it controls ghrelin. Ghrelin being a hormone that suggests, I need to eat, right? So melatonin suppresses that. Melatonin picks up or peaks leptin, which is then a hormone that tells you I'm satiated. So imagine without those, I'm hungry and I haven't had enough food. That's kicking off. So melatonin will regulate that whole system. When you get to the evening and the sun goes down, melatonin starts to rise. Should be rising in a natural situation. You know, I say use nature as a filter. Let's say we're in the savannah right now. Sun sets, right? So then I go through all the way through, and then by 10 p.m. melatonin is at its peak. And melatonin then helps synthesize stuff like human growth hormone, right? Apoptosis, which is how you transform unhealthy cells into healthy cells, melatonin, right? So it has roles they suggest within cancer. We've done studies that suggest night shift workers versus day shift workers, right? Night shift workers have high rates of breast cancer and prostate cancer to day shift workers. Blind people who aren't exposed to blue spectrums of light have this NHS study, they have 11 hours of melatonin. So that's kind of the natural melatonin cycle. And they have the 35 to 50% less cases of breast and prostate cancer. So what we can all be doing there is, the study is this, right? So they show a simulated night shift experiment versus a sleep chamber darkness. And then they have a simulated night shift worker experience, but wearing amber glasses or blue blocking glasses, which block the blue and green spectrums of light that are picked up by the suprachiasmatic nucleus, which suppresses melatonin, right? Okay?
So good.
So when we suppress that melatonin, again, it's the regulatory system of your hormones, it's the cellular behavior, it's human growth hormone, all those factors, not just a sleep hormone, you know? So what they show in that study is the night shift workers, when they do a melatonin test in the morning, there's no melatonin in their system because they've been surrounded by blue and green spectrums. That's suppressing it. They then show the dark chamber, full melatonin, like the blind person study. And then they show people that have worked in the same simulated experience with the same blue and green spectrums, but wearing blue blocking glasses, they have the same levels of melatonin as the dark. So if you're a night shift worker, or even you're at home and you're working, like I sometimes have to sit, I'm writing a book at the moment, so for me it's like in front of a screen sometimes. How do I mitigate that? Well, I just put amber glasses on. Then I know my hormones are in check, my metabolism in check, my cellular health is in check, and I know my digestion's in check. And then I don't need to be asleep. And why is that? Why is that important? Not to necessarily be asleep, because we have so much stress, don't we? We say, right, okay, you need to be asleep for 8 hours. Everyone should be asleep for 8 hours. Most of my entrepreneurs that come and see me, that's too stressful. They're already upregulated, think I didn't get 8 hours sleep last night, and then it's the complete opposite of what we're trying to achieve. So then we look at nature again as the filter. And there's a study through Professor Siegel at the University of California, right? And he looks at 3 independent tribes, 33 members in each tribe, and they study them for 1,165 days, right? Not one of those tribesmen, women, are asleep for 8 hours. They're asleep between 5.7 and 7.1 hours. What's different? Well, lighting, obviously. Air quality, so air purification. So if you want to bring that into the bedroom, it would be air purifiers or plants, right? And that will remove, the air purifiers will remove like 99.9% of particles or neurotoxins, let's say. The other one is temperature. The temperature's a lot lower. They have a fire going, but the fire's for many means, but the point being the fire's always going. So that's why they can't all be asleep, you know? So they have to keep the fire going. So when he then broke away and they looked at 33 members of the Hadza, they then realised that how many hours or minutes do you think they were all asleep together? The 33 members of the Hadza, over 220 hours. How long together?
I know the answer, so you two have a guess.
Well, from what you said, they
When they're all asleep at the same time, at any one time.
All 33.
Asleep at the same time.
Well, they can't because somebody's got to watch the fire.
No, but now and again they do. So
Okay.
Notwithstanding any duties they might have to carry out.
Over 220 hours.
Yeah.
50 hours?
100.
18 minutes. Because they're always up and down. They just, a sleep-wake cycle. So they're asleep, then they wake. They sleep and they wake. And because the elders go a little bit earlier and the young ones want to, they want to be up a bit later, don't they? So they're all doing that. And it's like a rhythm that they go into. So that it kind of removes the stress understanding that. But what's different again? So we don't have the blue and green spectrums of light. The air quality is different. The air purity is different. But another really interesting fact. The modern day fire is like the television, isn't it? Right. So what they have around the fire is wisdom and amazing stories and just imparting really nourishing and empowering information, because innately they're wild, connected, empowered beings. What we have is like toxic news and toxic movies.
No, we have buy some nappies is what we have.
Yeah.
We have
do you know what I mean? Yeah, and commercials.
We have
and
buy nappies, buy cars. By everything that's not to do with what you should be doing.
And all of that stuff's going in before you go to sleep. And when you're in sleep, you're really, you're in these really the brain frequencies that, if you meditate, Chris, you meditate, right?
Yeah.
Right, we're in the brain frequency when we're sleeping of really the deepest meditation, right? You understand that? So you're going to watch all this weird stuff and then you're going to go into deep meditation. If you understand manifestation and intentions, you want to be in a dropped-in frequency to bring stuff in. What are we bringing in? What information do you want before you go to sleep? So
M&Ms.
Yeah,
that's what we're doing, though, isn't it?
And it's just looking at it just from that perspective. It's like, well, how do I flip my environment? And that can be it. Then you just put really romantic films or comedy or something that's, or even just try having a conversation.
Tonu Riddle is with us. The National Three Bear Peaks Challenge begins on Wednesday the 6th of May to Friday the 15th of May. Follow Tony on this at TonyRiddle.com. And the whole run will be barefoot, 2 marathons a day. When did you hatch this little plan, this little beauty, Tony?
Well, it's off the back. I ran Land's End to John O'Groats 30 days. So I did 30 miles a day for 30 days. In September, barefoot. And then I arrived back from there, and the whole thing was, it was basically to raise awareness, not just for the environment. It created that moment of people would go, wow, okay, barefoot running length of the UK. So it's on a socially stream, eyebrows raised, and then boom, I can create a platform, raise awareness, sustainability in the environment. So that was one. And then I kind of hatched this plan that I can be, okay, these events are great for that. So the next one will be about almost like offsetting. We're going to ask people to recycle and then just log what they're doing over that period of time, or offset. So you could be like rewilding Britain, offset trees, or Terra Nutra and just offsetting carbon for those 9 days that I run. That was kind of behind it. After running 30 miles a day for 30 days on a very unnatural surface, which is called, of course, tarmac and road.
Entirely barefoot the whole way?
Entirely barefoot. There was some gnarly stuff that went on with that, because what you realise is that it's the same plane. It's not natural. It's not like going running in the mountains, like I'm going to run the 3 peaks in the mountains. Then it's a very different sensory experience, and it's always changing. So you kind of use different intrinsic muscles and different sensory systems. And then we realize that's nature. That's where we would all, for 200,000 years, that's kind of what we would be doing. Whereas tarmac's very recent, right? So the only thing that changes within the tarmac experience is not the plane or the linear approach. It's just how gnarly it becomes. So not only are you just wearing away the same pads, the more north I went, the more gnarly it got. So it's just like we wear more away. So through that process, it was like, okay, I want to do the 3 peaks. I'd heard so much about the 3 peaks. How can we flip it? So rather than drive between the peaks, as in the carbon footprint of driving, let's run it. So normally you do 3 peaks, Snowdon, Scaffold Pike, Ben Nevis, and then there's the mileage between that you then drive, and you do it in 24 hours or 36 hours, whichever challenge you choose. So I thought, I'm going to run it. Let's run it. Let's do it. So let's run the 4:85. And I had to give it a bit of time because we just had a new baby in October. So it's literally...
Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks, man. So Katerina was pregnant. They came with me, like the whole family, the whole crew were with us on the September run. And then I had to give it a bit of time, to land. And everyone was like, what's the next one? What's the next one? I said, well, we've got a son. That's what's the next thing. That's the next challenge. Looking forward to that. We'll invite that in. And then it's always for some reason, it's around Christmas and New Year. I go, I know. I think it's just having the time, the time away from everything.
And does your wife say he's got that look about him again? He's hatching a plan.
Yeah, well, the bigger plan is, I'm going to do that. And then over the next, it's X amount of years until I'm 50. So the idea is to interview sustainability experts over a period of time, raise awareness for the environment. And then I want to visit all the indigenous populations around the world and interview the true environmentalists, the ones that actually are still part of the ecosystem rather than separate of it, and invite them in, because no one seems to be inviting the true environmentalists in to understand what it is we need to be doing.
Well, the meek shall inherit the earth. Well, guess what? Guess what's around the corner? Rachel, you're fascinated with Tony's feet, aren't you?
I'm shocked and surprised by Tony's face.
Tell us A, what you expected, and B, what the reality
I
is.
assumed that they would be sort of calloused and really hard and a bit of a mess.
Bit Hobbit-like.
Yeah, totally. And scarred and whatever. And actually, they're probably the smoothest looking feet I've ever seen on a person of your age. Not that I go around looking at people's feet
It's
all the
okay,
time.
you don't have to defend yourself.
But they're as
you either
smooth
do
as
or
my
you don't. It's
children's.
what you do is in your private is your business. Is it true that your feet have extended to two extra sizes since you've been doing these longer runs?
Yeah, it's I went from a 43 to a 45 on the last... Well, the training going into it, you appreciate
Is that just because they're spreading more?
Well, think of it like, Chris, if you went to a gym, right, and you do, or let's say you went to see, maybe you had bone density issues, and you go and see a specialist, and they say, right, okay, what you need to do is do more weight, and more weight will increase muscle density, bone density. And so when you walk or stand, there's only 1 times your body weight in ground reaction forces. When you run, there's 2 times your body weight in ground reaction forces, and when you sprint, there's 3 times your body weight. So I'm 75 kilos. When I'm running, there's 150 kilos landing on one leg each time. So if we understand growth and adaptation, we would soon understand that, well, actually, if you let your feet free of the encasement being the shoe, then they will just get thicker and stronger and adapt to that. There's like 33 joints, 26 bones, and 100 muscles, tendons, ligaments in your feet, right? So that system will just get stronger and stronger and stronger. And with that, you experience growth because the bone density improves and the muscles and tendons get stronger.
So we've been banging on about this. So I run in V-rooms, Rachel runs in V-rooms, Vassa's now and again in V-rooms, don't you? And I love the fact that I can run. I'm not quick. I'm a shuffler, a scuttler.
That's great.
But I know that when I run in these things where there's less of something synthetic between the sole of my foot and the planet, on which we live, I know that the energy that I put that hits the ground comes straight back into my foot and sort of launches it back off the ground again. And I can feel that, and I just find it so much easier. Is that the basic principle?
It's sensory feedback. I do road work in Vivos as well. So Vivo barefoot, I love them. Because again, it'll give you a wide toe box, right? But the idea is that's 3 millimeters. So you're running in 5 fingers, right?
Yeah.
So anything above, they suggest above 4 millimeters will dumb down the sensory information that feeds your brain, so your movement brain. So every time your foot lands on the ground, we get what's called a transient impact, which shoots the brain and says, okay, I need to become really efficient and minimize the risk of injury, which will be about how I deal with the forces. So the external influences will be gravity and ground reaction forces, and then your mind should be able to make the decision on what muscles and tendons you use. So that's almost like, it's really simplifying biomechanics. Kinetics is the study of forces. Kinematics is the shapes I make due to the forces. So a human being can walk, can run, can sprint. That's one of it. 3 patterns. A horse will have 4, right? So it walks, it trots, it canters, it gallops, right? What we do is when we dumb down that sensory information and put more rubber between us and the earth, we create more shapes because we don't get the impact that we need, which means I get something that's blurred between walking and running, and we call it jogging. And jogging means that you start landing on your heel and rolling through, which is only appropriate for when you walk. You have like 3 rocking actions in your ankle. You have a heel rocker, an ankle rocker, and a forefoot rocker. So you like land on your heel, and then you roll through to a flat foot position, then you go off your big toe, which is the 3rd rocker. When you run, you should be doing 2. So it's like you land on rocker number 2, which is flat-footed, and then you go off on rocker number 3. When you sprint, you go 3 rocker only, which is like the toe box of the foot. So all that information is necessary to perform the wild task of running.
So obvious, isn't it?
But when you basically put them away and you lock them away, it's also the shape of the shoe. It's not just a sensory. So if you get a piece of paper, draw around your foot, right? What should be the widest area? For me, it's like I'm really wide in the toe box, right? Really super wide, big toes in line where it should be in one straight line. And then I draw around the heel, and the heel's much more narrow. If you then take your footwear and you put it on the piece of paper and you draw around it, you will find that nearly all modern footwear is more narrow in the toe box than it is the heel, which means the great toe, the big toe, is actually 4 times denser and thicker than all the other toes. The slimmest, least loading toe is the little one. So where do you want to put your weight? You want to put it through the big toe. But if your big toe drifts in because of your footwear, it heads over to the least dense bones.
And then you get your ITBs and you get twisting out and you
start
pronation.
You supinate and you pronate because you can't find the big toe. It's as simple as that. But the sensory stuff's fascinating.
We're getting a bit nerdy running hair-wise. We've got to back the running truck up a bit.
But speaking of injuries,
yep.
I once had a high ankle sprain. So in the mountains of Snowdonia. So be careful when you're there.
Yeah.
It took me about a year properly to recover from a high ankle sprain. Talk to us about how you recovered from your high ankle sprain in October.
We've got about a minute for this.
Oh, wow, it's a long one. Okay. So I was running I got to right at the end of the run, day 26 of the 30 days, 30 miles a day, 30 days, barefoot run. And I'm in the hills somewhere and I get lost in a forest and I leap over a stream. As I'm leaping over it, legs are a bit tired, rock moves, displaces, upper ankle sprain. So I'm kind of hobbling, walking, between walking and running, more painful, right? I tried both. I need someone to come and pick me up. They then pick me up. Day 27, I'm waking. I can't stand up properly. It's too sharp. It gets you right in the anterior of the ankle. And so everyone was in the house. Right, everyone go out. I need my headspace. Everyone went to Loch Ness for the day. The whole family are out. And I just sobbed for the first part. Just let it go. Just let everything out. All the adversity, the whole lot was just out, and found the vulnerability within it, which enables you to first start flipping the switch. I then went into breath work and meditation, which got the voice and the language from being I'm a victim, to I'm an empowered being and I know I can heal myself. And so then I went from victim to that just through breathing and meditation. And then I used ice and was doing like 3 minutes in the ice, 3 minutes in heat, 3 minutes in ice, 3 minutes in heat, loads of plant-based food, and then sleeping. And then I get up and I do the same thing, breath work, meditation. And then the next day, I got up and I ran 30 miles. The day after that, I ran 47 miles, and I finished on a 57-miler on the last day.
Hey! I've heard you tell that story before, but that's the quickest you've ever done it. Thank you so much.
The Chris Evans Breakfast Show with Sky.